Yes, and that is Siesta Ocho. That means it must be time for another City Hall siesta here. Michael Halley joining us, 4th Council Ward City Council person, going to give us the latest what's happening at the City Hall in an unofficial but very personal review. Michael, how you doing today? Good to see you.
I'm good. Glad to be here.
Nice to have you with us. Warm enough for you?
A little too warm, but got to take it, got to roll with it.
That's right. It's Iowa, after all. We'd like to thank Jason Strong for being in the house, Fairfield Media Center, and you can catch that on their website. Also, you know, he does the entire evening's events if you want to check out word for word what's going on, but we'll do a little sum up after each session, Tuesday following lunchtime at 12:30, Thursday dinner time 6:30 p.m., and the following Monday 6:30 a.m. for you early breakfast goers. Michael, what do you got on the docket?
Well, first, let me apologize for missing our normal city business. Would have been 3 weeks ago. I could not make it because we, as in the hiring committee for the new Park and Rec director, were interviewing that day at the regular time. So it would have been over the lunch hour on a Tuesday. 3 weeks ago, we interviewed the gentleman who we ended up offering the position to. His name's Calvin Todd. He's originally from Ida Grove, Iowa.
Nice.
Decided that he wanted to be in the Park and Rec profession from high school. So he went to college for it, and then after college, he was doing an internship out east and found a position in West Virginia. And has been working there since, has been promoted from, I think he was more like maintenance at first, and now he's the assistant to a county parks department with a budget twice as big as the Fairfield. So he's got familiarity with the big budget, and during the interview, some of the things that struck me were that he followed his passion, so to speak, and went out of state where he didn't really know anyone just so he could stay in the Park and Rec, which he had mentioned that if he had stayed in his hometown, he would have ended up being either a farmer or a factory worker. So that shows that he really is passionate about recreation. And then also that in the area he's from, or not from, but where he's currently residing in West Virginia, there's rather economically depressed area, and so they've been offering a lot of free programs. And I also liked that their offerings from their department weren't all something people had to pay for. Mm-hmm. So that impressed me as well. He talked about concerts outside and maybe free movie in the park, things that we'd like to do more of here.
Excellent.
And also he gave an example of where his supervisor was going to turn an area into a parking lot, and he stepped up and said, how about a practice field? We need more of those. So they ended up doing a practice field. And so basically he's it's just, this is his world, and so he really stood out among all the candidates.
Great.
So he'll be moving here over the 4th of July weekend and then starting his new job right after that.
In July,
beginning first week of July.
Well, good job. I know it's a lot of, it's always a process going through different candidates, and there's pros and cons always, and right?
Yep. I mean, there were some strong candidates who had qualities that were great. I always wish you could just take all the good qualities and put them into one imaginative, fictionalized person. But
I wonder that about myself.
Don't we do that all the time? When we imagine that perfect employee, or that perfect partner, or that perfect friend. All right. So,
and by the way, what's his name again?
Calvin Todd, Todd.
Okay, Calvin Todd. Well, welcome.
Don't call him Todd.
I always get confused with those last names.
Yeah, it's
first
like
name.
Scott Tim. How many times has he been called Tim?
Dennis James. You know what I mean? There's just a lot of them.
Yeah, there are. All righty. So this is, as James said, an informal review of our June 13th regular council meeting. It's not just a review. What we get to do here is put things in context. I think a lot of the times what makes the city council meetings a little hard to follow for the public is the context. Sometimes we're talking about something that we've been working on for a while, and if a person hasn't been paying attention, they sometimes won't really understand how it fits into the larger structure.
And of course, the whole point there is not to go back and explain context every time. Otherwise, it'd slow everything down.
Here we can do that. So we have that.
Slow food radio, baby.
That's right. And then also
for slow minds.
Well, another thing, and I would like to see this changed, is there's oftentimes information on our iPads here that the public doesn't see, and there's no reason for it. It's not private. It's just I don't know if it's not found a way to share it. So I would like to change that, especially for FMC to have it potentially to put across the screen. So when we were talking for so long last night about rezoning this property, the people at home, if they could have seen the map, it would have made, I mean, for me, I'm very visual. It makes 1,000 times more sense when you see it than when you just hear people talking about it. So as we become more technologically advanced here in the city of Fairfield, that's one idea I have, is to share these images with people. And even, I'm not going to ask our guy to do this, but while we were talking about the rezoning, potentially that image could come up in the video that Jason Strong makes. Hint, hint. All right, so getting back to it. In our consent agenda, we always have the resolutions to hire any city employees. So we had a couple new ones that are interesting ones. One was Calvin Todd for Park and Rec. Another was an internship. We got approached by a college student who wanted to do an internship at City Hall. So we're going to find some work for that person to do over the summer. They get a little bit of local government experience, and maybe the city benefits from some of the projects they work on.
Great. That's definitely a great thing. I know Fairfest has somebody. We've had people here before. It's a great way to integrate, and as long as, it's fitting it in and making it do, but it's a great opportunity.
It is. And we had a promotion at the water billing department. Mindy Fannin got promoted to the head of that department. That's when you walk into City Hall, the ladies up front are actually waterworks employees. They're for the waterworks and wastewater utility bill department. All right, so getting into the meat of it, we didn't have any public appearances, so we just jumped right into all our action items and such.
Is that usual, or just mostly just depends on?
I'd say maybe a third of the time.
Okay.
Maybe a quarter we don't have public appearance. And then sometimes we get stacked up with them. So, that's
I've
just
been there
the way it is.
Nights with 5. But again, just while we're there, if you're interested, if you want to bring something, you go through the desk and make a little appointment, right?
I got to get it a few days before the Friday, before the Monday council meeting, so you can get on the agenda. And it's just a form you fill out. It just says what you want to talk about. And people are asked to keep it to about 5 minutes if possible. It's not a hard and set rule depending on what they're talking about. But usually it's for people wanting to get permission to use a park or get permission to close a street for a parade or an event. Sometimes, generally if it's a complaint about something, then it'll go through something more specific
like the
committee or if it's planning and zoning or whatnot.
And by the way, if what's being asked to be talked about at the desk, they'll say, well, it'll be funneled there. Yep. So it's not even like you have to figure it out before you go exactly.
Yeah, they'll help. People there at City Hall will help.
If it's something that would be better served going through a committee or whatever first, then that'll be told to you and you'll be able to proceed. So
and remember we had a lady who wanted a change on a certain street in town, and so she went through committee, and committee said, we'll do this, but we won't do this. And then she came to council to appeal. And the council said same thing. It's asking too much for what she wanted. So, but that's due process.
And you do have the right to appeal, and then maybe it would be different on the council, maybe not.
And the council's 7, and the committees are 3. So, if you get the 4 members who weren't on the committee to agree with you, then you could potentially get whatever action you want taken.
Okay. Well, thanks for that.
Yeah. See, that's what I'm talking about. Context. We got to talk about these things because a lot of this stuff is pegging off these. There was nothing really juicy last night, so I'm just going to hit some of this. All right, so a lot of it had to do with this property that FIDA owns over on the corner of North 12th and West Gear Avenue. It's really right at the edge of city limits. Gear Avenue is where that driving range.
Yes.
That's Gear and 8th, I believe.
Okay, so it's a little further up.
Yeah, and Connolly's is on the north side of Gear. And Gear split down the middle. The south half is city limits, and north half and forward and onward is county. So it's really right at the edge of our city limits. And they want to, FIDA brought this to Planning and Zoning, which is a volunteer commission, appointed people that look at all these things. And if anyone wants to rezone a property, they have to basically make their case for it. So they wanted to rezone this portion that's, let's see if I can describe it. It's basically the entire lot minus the land that Sky Factory sits on.
Okay. So
it borders Gear on the north, 12th Street on the east. On the south, it borders, I believe it's mostly the National Guard property. And then kind of a chunk out of the southwest. This is why a picture would help. A chunk out of the southwest is where Sky Factory is.
Imagine if you will.
Imagine if you will. And then I think 14th Street or some street over there. So
I gotcha.
And the idea is that, first of all, the one little chunk of it, we talked about this, one little piece of it on the south side is being sold to the National Guard, and they're going to use it for parking. And then they're rerouting the trail that goes by there so that it doesn't get affected in a negative way. But the really exciting part is rezoning a portion of it along 12th Street for housing, for residential.
Okay.
They've got 7 lots, and they've got 3 developers.
So individual homes?
Yeah, and so like 2 lots go to one developer, 3 go to another, and then 2 go to Habitat for Humanity.
Cool. So
they're all, got this kind of diversification, but they would all face 12th Street, so they're east facing. The trail goes right along the front of them, so they've got kind of a built-in sidewalk. It's residential across the street on the other side of 12th. It's been residential there for a long time, decades, hundreds of years, I don't know how long, but it really makes sense that strip would be residence. If it goes well, there's room where they could expand and do more residents to the west. They would get access off of Gear and come down to a little cul-de-sac. So,
interesting.
As everyone knows, we need housing, and
Absolutely.
This is one of the first to actually come and say, the builder's ready.
Wow.
I mean, he's ready. I talked to him last night after the meeting. Now, in order to change the zoning, you have to pass it through the ordinance, and ordinance requires 3 readings. So, and the third piece was changing it. This was all A1, which is agriculture, which is kind of the standard kind of edge of town, especially if you annex, but this wasn't annexed, but it was farmed. And so the western portion, kind of north of where Sky Factory would be M1, which is light manufacturing. So they need to rezone that portion to M1. They need to rezone the little parking lot portion of the south to M2 because that's what currently matches the National Guard. And then the other section would be R1 or R2? R2. R2 does allow for sometimes duplexes, but I think these are all planning to be single-family residents.
Okay.
So 3 different ordinances, 3 different readings. There was a request to do what we call suspend the rules and pass it all at once. And no one felt like we should do that because this is the first time it's really out in the public. Yes, it did go through planning and zoning, and yes, the neighbors were. But we just want people to have time.
Because it's a different.
It's a change.
Yeah. Change. Yep. It's not a huge order, but it is. 7 houses. That's good.
So a couple of us, myself, Councilman John Revlinsky, both agree that between now and 2 weeks, when we have our next, if we don't hear anything negative, we could go ahead and suspend the rules and pass from the second to final, rather than wait an extra 2 weeks.
And they're ready to go, you say?
They are. The developer has I think the northern 2 lots.
Well, I'm just excited because there's so little building going on anywhere. It seems like these days.
I know, and yet we say we need it, and so it's like, all right, so if anybody's really ready to hit ground or start, it's yes, we want to help them. And as Mayor Malloy said, we had another amendment to the North Campus Village, and we've been doing that. They've amended that a lot, and they keep kind of coming up with a little. And so, Mayor Malloy, thank the council for holding the hands of the developer. It's that we want it to be an easy process, and we want to make it easy, but at the same time, we want to make sure the adjacent properties are not negatively affected and such. And so we passed those 3 rezonings from the first to second reading last night. But we also did hear from North Campus Village a slight amendment to the width of a street. And then we heard from the neighbor on the north who was unhappy with the amount of earth that was moved right up adjacent to his farmland. And so we're giving them 2 weeks. The developer said in 2 weeks it'll be put back. Mm-hmm. He said, I'm happy to work with them. We'll walk out there with an engineer and figure out what the best way to do it. So it's, there's some things the city doesn't want to have to get involved with if we don't have to.
Sure.
So they should be able to figure that out.
Sounds good. The mayor introduced Ari Berman, who gave a talk at Revelations about his book, Give Us the Ballot. It was a quite nice success story for Ari from here, and did a show for a couple of years and writes about, was at the White House, and it was a nice meeting, so packed they probably could have filled 3 upstairs of Revelations.
I had a feeling that venue wasn't going to be big enough for
that. But it was a sweet evening and a nice work.
Great.
Oh, by the way, that's Michael Halley. You're listening to I'm James Moore. This is City Business. After each City Council session, we've been highlighting what's going on, and we'll continue that right now. You're listening to KRUU-FM, 100.1 on your FM dial. FMC also in the house.
All right, so we're moving forward on not a seal coat. What is it called? An overlay, because the seal coat is a kind of a low investment, low return type of process that you can do on gravel roads. It's a spray that keeps the dust down and hardens it to an extent, but it then always needs to be done every few years. Mm-hmm. So our public works superintendent, Daryl Biscard, said he was going to this year use some of his funds, he gets road use tax funds, to invest in an overlay of asphalt on Grimes Avenue. I think there are 2 blocks where, for whatever reason, Grimes is gravel. It's kind of odd, but between B and C, I think, and maybe C and D, it's gravel. And instead of getting out there and seal coating it all the time, put an overlay of asphalt, and then that will last much longer, provide a smoother surface. So we're moving on that. There's only, I think, Norris Asphalt's the only asphalt company in the area. They're from Ottumwa, so they're the only one who bid. Their bid came in right around the engineer's estimate, so it's pretty good. Mm-hmm. So moving on that, also moving on, going to repave a portion of...
Hey, folks, it's called City Business, okay?
Hey, portion of, where is it? 6th Street.
Okay.
It's over by Depot, just between Depot and Grimes. It's, I wouldn't say very well traveled, but it's really in bad shape. And so that'll get, I believe that's a reconstruction. So total reconstruction. Tear it out, redo the foundation, and fix some stormwater issues over there at the same time. So yeah, like I said, this is mostly nuts and bolts of the city. This one's good. This last one.
Okay.
Darren Hamilton is a council member.
Right. A long time.
I'm going to try to set the stage because I asked him, how did you even find this? He found an error in something we had passed in 2011. He found an error in the ordinance where one number goof up in the code is numbered. So it's like the first is the chapter, and then it's a section, and there's these different parts. And someone wrote a 7 when it should have been a 3. And so when we amended it, it actually took the amendment part and put it in a section that we had gotten rid of. So for these years, it wasn't official in there. It's just minor things. But he went back and looked at it because as the property committee chairman, people were complaining to him about an increase in the home occupancy fee that the city, remember we talked about that a few months ago? Yeah. And it made it so that some people just said it's not worth it to do this. And so they were asking him about it, which made him go back and look at the code, which made him find this mistake. And so he brought it to property committee, brought it to council. We did suspend the rules, and we just passed this thing so that it...
Well, just an error, right?
Just an error.
That nobody even noticed.
No one noticed, but...
Good for you, Darren.
Yep.
We call him Sherlock Holmes.
That's a good one. Ed called him the Code Warrior.
There you go. That's
you call him Hawkeye. You call him a lot of things because, it takes a detailed mind to even notice one number.
It's a good thing, It's a good thing.
It is. It's impressive. All right, property committee.
There should be some kind of prize or something.
Really?
We should have a contest.
Well, we'll think about that. Property committee met twice.
Okay.
We met last week, both Monday and Friday last week. On Monday, we were discussing this thing, the amendment that needed to be made, and also a letter that we want to send out in the mailings, with the utility bill, just to remind people how to use the compost site. But another issue that came up is that local contractors, so people have businesses and they get paid to do some landscaping work, and they get paid to haul the material to some private place. That's what they're paid for. Then take it to our public site and essentially subsidize their private operation with the taxpayer funds, because then we end up having to manage all that material, which is,
right.
It's more money when we bring the chipper in twice a year. It's more material there, and it's not what it was for. It's for residences. So, Daryl Bisgard, Public Works Director, just wanted to write a letter and find out from the city, well, how do we add just a little bit of teeth to this? So it's not just him showing up saying, hey, contractor, get out of here. And then the contractor comes back, and then the contractor just doesn't seem to comply. And it's illegal dumping if somebody comes and brings something that has been stated is not for that purpose. And so contractors, stop please going out there and dumping your stuff, but they're welcome to use and take the material, all they want. The compost, the mulch. It's all available for anyone.
Right.
But for the good of the public and the fairness to the taxpayers, it's a residential service, not something that we want contractors to use as a subsidy, in a sense, to offset some, because that's normal business. If you have a contractor business that you take in materials, so you bring a tree down, you have to have a place that you take that material. That's kind of the cradle to grave kind of thing. And it reminds me of one of the reasons that their annual curbside trash pickup got canceled is because that became very expensive, because contractors were abusing that as well. People would report that there was suddenly all this kind of renovation material left on their curb that wasn't from their house. Oh. So there were contractors in the area who were putting it on the curb in random locations. And over the years, the expense just kept going. I think the last time they did it, I can't remember how many truckloads Public Works had to take out to the landfill. So again, the spirit of these services is, it's the taxpayers, but not the private businesses. I get the distinction. Sometimes there are gray areas. If I have somebody take it out.
If a contractor, is working on his private home or doing something even for a friend, that's a different issue.
Or a contractor who owns properties that they manage.
Of course.
And that, and that's a gray area. But hey, if it's your property and you're bringing it out for yourself. But
for instance, if you own a place that you're renting and you're doing repairs and so forth, that would still fit the bill.
Yeah, but if it's a job you were paid for, nope. So
and then I guess how do you? I know trying to police it is like it wouldn't be worth trying.
So that's why for Daryl, it's easier to say no contractors. Just don't come out here.
Cool.
Unless you're picking stuff up.
And when that letter comes out, we can refresh everybody.
The letter that will go to the residents won't be about that. It'll just be about, for the residents.
Oh, I gotcha.
Remember we have this. And
we'll let everybody know, too.
Yeah. But the contract letters, it's a very small handful.
Specific, yeah.
Yep. And then we met Friday, property committee, and we discussed the outdoor dining ordinance that, just to back up, remember the company that came in last year and did a community assessment for tourism. They looked at our city through the lens of new visitors and offered a list of recommendations that not only make it more visitor friendly, but just more enjoyable, more livable. And one big one was to enhance outdoor dining opportunities, specifically in our downtown. So the idea is that when people are outside, there's more social interaction. There's more of that feeling that things are happening when people go by. You could have a crowded restaurant, but somebody going by couldn't tell. But when there's an overflow outside, it just creates that social interaction.
And some do have that. Cafe P has a few tables outside. Revelations.
Yep. There are a bunch of places that have it. Currently, the city code actually says you can't. And so it's been all these years kind of something the city has just ignored.
I gotcha.
And had a kind of a general, just don't take up more than half the sidewalk kind of rule.
Right.
But this ordinance formalizes it more for the restaurants who want to make it an outdoor area where people can have alcohol, because that has to follow these certain state codes. So if they don't need a fence. But if they do, they need a fence, and then we have some guidelines for those fences. Yep, for alcohol. So, so currently somebody could potentially take up to about 7 feet out from the building, which is about half of the sidewalk, which leaves about 3.5 feet of sidewalk space, not including the brickwork, which is a little bit slanted and wouldn't really, say for a wheelchair, be ideal. So we've expanded that to say a minimum of 4 feet for sidewalks. So we're actually making, in this ordinance, it's more pedestrian friendly. It opens it up a little bit more, and also set some guidelines. It should, in a sense, formalize a lot of this and clean things up. Really, there are only a handful of businesses that are interested. Revelations obviously has some. Shokai is moving,
and they're moving. Also,
they're moving, and they're interested. Cafe Paradiso. Nicholas as well. Yeah, if he wants to do something on the side that faces Maine, that's outside of our jurisdiction. That's DOT.
In Burlington too.
But if he's on the north side of Burlington, again, we didn't include that. But if it's on the sidewalk, you can follow the general rules. And then Amor Mio may be interested. So anyone who's concerned that this will expand the number of tables and chairs that are outside and really bottleneck everything, that's not really an issue. We're moving in the opposite direction of that. So
I think it's lovely to have.
Yeah. So we're almost done. We're almost got this thing ready to bring for one more pass through. And then after that, one more point, Personnel Committee met. We're still working with our fire chief about different models. Right now, there are 3 full-time drivers. They have 24/7 coverage at the fire station. So if there's an emergency, there's someone there to take the truck to the site, and all the firefighters meet. Call it the swarm effect. One is retiring. We're thinking, can we replace those hours with part-time? So we still have 24/7 coverage, but we save a little bit. So we're looking into that as well, trying to try to be fiscally responsible.
Well, let's get fiscal. Isn't that Olivia Newton-John? Oh, okay. Sorry, I had in on something bad. Well, folks, this is James Moore. We've been talking with Michael Halley, Jason Strong quietly in the background. We'll be back in a couple weeks, I would guess, for more city business.
2 weeks.
Stay tuned.